Epic Games has officially announced the end of Fortnite Chapter 2 yesterday, and I mean, no surprise, look at all of our videos the past couple weeks. And so while we're excited for the new chapter, we have to look back at some things players absolutely disliked in this one, starting with one of the most hated seasons of all, Chapter 2 Season 1. Season 1 was the longest running season in Fortnite history. Yeah, it was amazing to get some much needed content, but after 4 months of the same thing, it got boring real quick. And it just didn't help that Season 1 gave us a very lackluster loot pool. I mean, Epic literally removed almost every item from Chapter 1 except for the core guns. And yeah, that was amazing at first, it made the game feel completely new, but on the other hand, after 4 months have passed and half the loot pool is missing, it just got really tedious. We missed old items like boogie bombs, drift boards, even launch pads are gone. The mobility was awful. But this wasn't the only hated thing in Season 1, because something truly game-breaking appeared in the middle of the season that had everyone rushing to get unlimited victory royales. Over at the new Slurpy Swamps POI, people figured out that you could just keep fishing and eating over and over until everyone else died in the storm. This broke not just the game, but also the internet. Everyone was doing this glitch. It was even being abused in tournaments. Now eventually Epic fixed this, but man, it was one of the most hated parts of Season 1. And things got worse though when it came to Season 2. We got so much amazing new stuff when the new season came around, it was an awesome change to the meta. But obviously with new changes, not all of them are gonna stick to the wall. And one of these were the new henchmen NPCs around the map. These guys were some of the most overpowered features of the season. They had so much health and practically aimbotted you. Doesn't matter if they're walking around with an AR or a sniper rifle, they just didn't miss. And by far the worst part of these guys wasn't just how overpowered they were, it was something way worse. When they were first added, you go into combat with them and some intense music would start playing. This music was probably the single-handedly most loud thing that I've ever heard. I mean, I'm surprised half the Fortnite community didn't get hearing problems after this. You couldn't hear anything around you when you're near a henchman. It was ridiculous. And while henchmen were too intense and that annoyed the community, the other end of the scale was something that was just so boring and made us all fall asleep. Midway through the season, Epic decided to do the most random and uninspired crossover we have ever seen in Fortnite. Yeah, over at Risky Reels, a show called Punk'd began playing every single hour in what was the most shameless crossover Fortnite has ever seen. It was obvious to everyone that the company who owned the show, Quibi, had just paid Epic millions of dollars to advertise in Fortnite, and that neither Quibi or Epic cared how much of a shameless ad it was. This wasn't received well by anyone in the game, and since then Epic has learned their lesson and has stuck to making crossovers feel at least a little bit more natural. And they also missed the mark when it came to one of the strongest items of the season. While we were all distracted by everything else in Season 2, the C4s were released and completely took us by surprise. These are still one of the most powerful items in Fortnite and blow up people straight through their builds. I mean, everyone was complaining when these returned, but luckily we didn't have to worry long as Season 2 came to an end and we jumped straight into Season 3. But there was already one big problem with this season from day one, and that was the flooded map. Amazing concept. I mean, people loved the idea of the entire island being submerged, but it was cool for a little while until it became really impractical. Every week, Fortnite drained the island and revealed a new POI, but this draining was about to take a while, and while we waited, the flooded map made it pretty hard to do basic things. Rebooting teammates was next to impossible because a majority of the reboot vans were underwater. It was hard to build anywhere. But one of the biggest challenges with this massive flooded map was the addition of sharks. They weren't that OP and they're still in the game to this day, as fun as ever, but back then with the flooded map, these sharks were some of the most annoying things you could ever come across. Every single place you dropped, a shark would be ready to smash through 10 walls just to eat you. They were non-stop. But they still weren't as determined to hunt you down as this other feature. While sharks would hunt you down near water, escaping to land still wouldn't be safe enough for you because you would just be minding your own business when suddenly an entire team of marauder NPCs drop right in front of you from the sky. And at that point, you are done for. The Marauders were the most overpowered NPCs we have ever faced in Fortnite. They had stink bombs that would just spam you with and finish a job with a simple rocket launcher to the face. And all of this was just topped off by the fact that Season 3 didn't just give NPCs stink bombs, they also gave players 2 new overpowered weapons. Yes, there was the flare gun, which quickly became Fortnite's own UAV. Some players absolutely loved the flare guns, but others hated it. And as for the charged shotgun, it was a completely new type of shotty, and people had a hard time getting used to it, especially because they removed the pumps, and if you remove the pump shotgun, guess what? People are gonna give hate to the new one. But that was tiny compared to what was in store for us, especially as we moved into Season 4. Now this was an interesting season, not just because it was the first ever crossover battle pass, but because it was the same season that Apple banned Fortnite from iOS. Right now, everyone who played Fortnite on iPhones is stuck on Season 3 and can't play beyond that, and they won't be able to play Fortnite again for another 5 years. Now, let me tell you, this had the entire internet talking when it happened, and while a lot of people have moved on, there are still Fortnite players you can't actually play the game because of this, which sucks. But for the people who were able to play Season 4, they were pretty annoyed by the fact that there were just so many mythics at the time. Now, it made sense that Epic added all of these, and the mythics themselves were amazingly designed, but there were a little too many of them. Every single player had one, and it made fights really difficult. It felt like you were actually in Avengers Endgame every single match, and if that was the intention, they nailed it. But something that definitely was intended was a problem with Thor's hammer. For some reason, when Epic released this thing as a harvesting tool, there was a gigantic problem with it. For all of us who wanted to feel cool and use this pickaxe, we were about to have a hard time because for no reason at all, this swung way slower than any other pickaxe in the game. Forget pay to win, this pickaxe was pay to lose, and it sucked too because everyone had been waiting for this to come to the game for years. And honestly, all of these were pretty mild problems compared to how good the rest of the season was. Well, that wasn't until Fortnite came around. For some reason, during this year, they decided to make Fortnite part of the regular game mode, turning it from Battle Royale into Team Deathmatch. If you remember, once you died, you switched to the Shadows team and had to take out the surviving players. It was a complete mess, and you were forced to play it instead of regular BR for some reason. And things got even weirder when we went into Season 5. One of the coolest things Epic has ever added to the game was sand tunneling. It made Fortnite feel so fresh, and it genuinely made Season 5 rank really high on people's lists. But there was one problem. Sand tunneling wasn't even there for most of the season. Yeah, there was a really game-breaking glitch that let you turn invisible after tunneling. So instead of solving the issue, Epic just deleted sand tunneling from the game. And it didn't come back until a few weeks before the season ended, which annoyed a lot of players. But not as much as the Dragon's Breath shotgun. This was one of the most underwhelming weapons to ever come to Fortnite. When it came out, everyone expected this to be a strong weapon that would be worth picking up. It was supposed to give out fire damage and be super powerful. And yet, it only had 2 bullets, and the reload speed made it feel like time had stood still. I mean, it was that long. So basically, no one used it, and eventually Epic just rotated the shotgun out, never to bring it back again. And while we were worried about that, other players are too busy abusing yet another unlimited wins glitch. Yeah, first we had the Season 1 fishing, now this. I mean, Epic can't really catch a break, can they? Basically, people would realize that you could just keep jumping into the 0 point and getting free health, and if you kept doing it, you would survive in the storm until everyone else had dropped dead. It was that simple, and everyone was doing it. But by far the funniest but also most annoying part of Season 5 was definitely FaZe Mando over here. He was always roaming the map, and even if you never saw him, he always saw you. You'd just be gliding down the map and you get trick shotted by the Mandalorian. This guy had insane aimbot and just went for anyone in the nearby area. It didn't matter if you were miles away, you were not safe. He had a sniper and was not afraid to use it. And luckily, he was gone with the rest of Season 5, just before Fortnite gave us one of the most surprising seasons of Chapter 2. Suddenly, we had a primal biome, an entirely new loophole, and one of the most annoyed communities in gaming. A lot of players really didn't like that Epic had replaced every single sniper in the game with a bow. Now, a lot of us love the bows, especially ones like the Shockwave and Explosive, but people who made snipers were not happy about this. And this new loophole also introduced crafting to Fortnite. To this day, it's actually one of the most helpful features in the game right now. Back in Season 6, it was especially useful. You can now turn makeshift weapons into primal ones, but for those who weren't able to craft or just didn't want to, the makeshift weapons were everywhere, and they weren't that good. So the entire loophole is full of lackluster weapons that you had to upgrade to even make usable. It was pretty frustrating. And while those are super underpowered, on the other end of the spectrum, we had the Mythic Primal Shotgun. This is by far one of the most powerful shotguns we've had in Chapter 2. It was so broken, I mean, it was practically Infinity Blade level of overpowered. And the same can be said for 2 new fish that were added in Season 6, the Cuttlefish and Stinkfish. Both of these things were abused by everyone to kill people with their builds, whether it's stink bombing them to death or just blowing them up. It did the job a little too well, okay? Despite all of this, Season 6 was still a really unique and fresh season, but nowhere near as good as Season 7. Now that was an amazing season. We had insanely fun items like the inflatable and prop gun, and the map changes kept us on our toes for weeks. Not to mention, we had a concert and a live event at the end. I mean, man, it was a great season. But obviously, no season is perfect, which is why Season 7 still had some hated items, like the UFOs. And I mean, come on, at the very start, the UFOs were ridiculous. They had a ton of health, you could just spam their cannons over and over again, killing everyone in your path. Not to mention, they had 3 respawns. Yeah, they were fun, but so broken, and oh man, they were brutal. And another example of a great idea done wrong were the cosmic chests. These were game-changing when they first came out. I mean, the idea of a chest that you had to work together to open, and you got a ton of loot from it, it sounded great on paper. Well, in reality, these take way too long to open, and the reason you always find them and can open them without getting third-partied is because almost no one actually used them. Especially in Season 7, most players just went for the mothership loot instead. And something a lot of people disliked was the recon scanner and railgun combo. You compare these things to literally wall hack. I mean, people hated it, but I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of fun. Another thing that split the community was the Rick and Morty collab. We love this crossover, but a lot of people just were not happy with it at all. You know, of course, it's just how the games work. You win some, you lose some. But when it comes to Season 8, it is probably the most community-splitting season of the entire chapter. While it was amazing to see the return of the cubes, as well as this awesome build-up to Chapter 3, there are obviously some problems with the season that has a lot of the community scratching their heads. Firstly, there are almost zero map changes this season. The entire map has been so focused on the cubes and their journey that the rest of the island has remained completely unchanged, especially because it was hit by a mothership 3 times the size of the island and it looks completely fine. Some people really wish we could have gotten better map changes this season, especially when you compare it to Season X. I mean, that was nuts. But one of the weirdest things about the Season 8 map is the fog. People were complaining all over social media because of the island's fog. It was really hard to see things, especially when you were high up. I mean, sometimes it felt like you could only fight people 5 feet in front of you. It was that bad. And we thought Epic would have fixed it by now, but it is still an issue. And something that has disappointed everyone universally this season hasn't been any kind of feature at all. It was actually the deletion of Fortnite China. Yes, Epic Games has given up on the Chinese version of the game, and it has hit a lot of players. People who played Fortnite China had their accounts completely deleted. That is years of work gone overnight with no kind of backup or anything. And it looks like it probably won't ever come back. Now that we are here, by far the most controversial thing about Season 8 has been the sideways. This is definitely the one thing that has split the community. On one side, people love this thing because it lets them grind zombies for health, free ammo, and loot or more. But others hate the sideways because it doesn't let you build at all, and you can't see outside the bubble. So basically, it is third-party paradise. Whether you like the sideways or not depends on your playstyle, but personally, I love it. And with that, those are the most hated things of Chapter 2. Thanks so much for watching. If we missed something that you hated, let me know down in the comments. It's been Tommy, and keep it here on Top 5 Gaming.